Harvard Medical School. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Phyllis Mullins.
I want you to know I was born and raised in Missouri, the show-me state. I talk a little slower, and so I think I ought to have a little longer to talk because it takes me longer to get it out. Yes, I want to tell the story of how I was introduced to fluoride. I will tell you the truth. Fluoride never even entered my thoughts before 1982. I was at Children's Hospital. My specialty was I was to develop animal models to look at and develop technology that would screen substances for having an adverse effect upon the brain and behavior. In the process of doing that, I drew the attention of Dr. Jack Hine, who was the director of the Forsyth Dental Center in Boston. It's right next to the Museum of Fine Arts, if you're not familiar with it. It's an old institution that used to provide free dental care for all the children of Boston. Dr. Hine wanted me to come to Forsyth because he wanted me to apply the new technology that we were working on to dental products. And he was suspicious that many of the dental products were causing a problem for the brain. And he wanted me to come and to develop the new computer system that we were in the process of working on. It was to be a brand new system that would totally make screening for neurotoxicity an objective measure. I'm going to, if they can turn down the slides, I'm going to, or turn down the lights so we can see the slides. I'm not trying to get you into the science, I'm just trying to get you to realize what was going on. We developed the first computer pattern recognition system where a computer actually did what the eyeball would do in terms of looking at behaviors. This computer system, we got the first VAC system, and it was totally dedicated to doing nothing but following the movements of animals and being able to pick out abnormal behavioral patterns. So I moved then to Forsyth. I agreed to come and to set the system up, and I also agreed that this system would be applied to fluoride as the first thing that we would study. When I moved to Forsyth, Dr. Jack Hine introduced me to what was known as the world's leading expert on fluoride chemistry and fluoride toxicology. That individual's name was Dr. Harold Hodge. Dr. Harold Hodge is one of the founding fathers of the Society of Toxicology. Dr. Hodge also was the chief pharmacologist on the Manhattan Project, and it was his responsibility to look at the toxicology of fluoride, although I didn't know that at the time. Then I worked on the computer system at Forsyth. We had our laboratory, we had our video cameras, we had the computers going. It took a lot of years. This system was successfully set up. It was the first system, as I said, where human intervention in doing these tests was totally taken out, so it was an objective measure. And then I had a physicist that worked with me, Dr. William Kernan, who was the head physicist at the Ames laboratory, and in fact he designed the programs to follow the movements of hydrogen particles through a bubble chamber. And he says, well, if we can follow hydrogen particles through a bubble chamber, we can follow rats through three-dimensional space. We took this system, we developed it, and we applied it to fluoride. Now, I must say that this is a digitized picture of what the computer sees, and so I'm just pointing this out because, as I say, this was a very unique system, and I was sought out by many different groups to apply this system to many different substances that were suspected. And the one that we developed that was most successful was in the look at the neurotoxicity of the treatments for childhood leukemia. And our system was put into the yearbook of oncology, and we were very successful. Then we applied it to fluoride, and we found some very suspicious results. We published this paper in 1995. It's not very clear. I'm sorry, maybe the lights are a little too bright. Can we dim the lights a little? Anyway, We found some very suspicious results. We published this in a peer-reviewed journal in Neurotoxicology and Teratology. I reported the results to Dr. Jack Hine, the director of the Institute. He got very excited. He says, we must fly to Washington and present this to the National Institute of Dental Research. He says we also need to report it to certain industries, which I proceeded and I did. I submitted a grant to the National Institutes of Health in 1992 to look at this. I gave a seminar at my institution for Forsyth, and I was met with some reaction from the senior members of the staff that they were very concerned. They were afraid that their money from the National Institute of Dental Research would be taken away if I published this information. Anyway, the paper came out. Forsyth notified the National Institute of Dental Research prior to it, and they asked me to do a television conference on this before my information came out. They wanted to see what we were saying. In 1994, I left Forsyth and chairman of that department, or head of the toxicology department. Then what I found in that study were three basic conclusions. There was no question that behavior was vulnerable to fluoride. Whether you got a very short exposure, and this in animals, if they're young, if it's prenatal, or if it's early postnatal, all you needed was 2 or 3 days exposure to this, and it caused a permanent change in behavior when the animals grew up. That's all the exposure. If you took all the other exposures away, and they got none other but that one exposure, that was it. It was enough to permanently change the behavior. Now, also in that study we found that the effects varied with age. If you were prenatally exposed, it was hyperactivity was the problem. If you were exposed as adults or at weanlings, we called it the couch potato. The problem was that they were hypoactive and very slow. Also, we found that the fluoride accumulated in the brain. And this is very different than what the literature had said before, because the literature had shown before, but they didn't do it appropriately. They said that it does not get into the brain and it does not accumulate, and we know that that is wrong. And this is just to show you some levels. For example, a control and exposed female in the hippocampus of the brain, some of the areas it's doubling and tripling in actual amount of fluoride in those regions of the brain. So we knew we were in trouble. The paper came out, and I started getting response from all over the world, and that's when I started learning that there's more to this fluoride story than just that it's good for your teeth. I got more information because I was upsetting people by saying this, and I learned that fluorine is a natural element. It is in a lot of different things. It's more common than chlorine and nitrogen, or as common as chlorine and nitrogen. And it's more common than carbon even. And because it's so ubiquitous, that assures that you are going to be exposed to fluoride, whether it's in your drinking water, whether it's through the air, whether it's via food or soil. You're still going to get exposures to fluoride. The other thing that was concerning was there are a lot of occupations out there that you are being exposed to fluoride to, whether you know it or not. If you work with aluminum, if you work with magnesium, if you work with any petrochemical, if you are in coal production, if you work in a glass factory or a brick factory or a tile factory, all of these will assure that you are going to be exposed to fluoride. You absorb it through your skin, you can inhale it. And to your body, it doesn't matter where this fluoride